Peace. Welcome to the YouTube live book reading of The African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality by Dr. Cheikh Anta and edited, translated by Mercer Cook. I'm your moderator and narrator, Uriel Riley. Live from the light here in LA. It's book reading time. I had one of the most magical moments ever. I've been meditating within it. Wanted to make sure I come on and shine that light with you. I'll tell you the story at the end of this reading. We pick up on page 85, chapter 4. Could Egyptian civilization have originated in the Delta? This is awesome. Peace, YouTube. Divine days and nights. Welcome. I wish all is well. Getting some good nourishment in your body. If you've been fasting, I hope that the fasting is doing well for you. We all are cleaning up, right? Constant cleanliness, very important to keep cleaning up. Chapter 4. Could Egyptian civilization have originated in the Delta? To explain the settlement of civilizations of Egypt, specialists invoke 4 hypotheses corresponding to the 4 points of the compass. The most natural of all a local origin, is the one most often challenged. This latter hypothesis in turn could be localized in 2 different places, Upper or Lower Egypt. In the case of Lower Egypt, it would be a question of what is now called the preponderance of the Delta. Why would an Egyptologist supporting the local origin theory try so hard to prove the preponderance of the Delta, despite the absence of any historical evidence? If this were not a roundabout way to establish a white Mediterranean origin for Egyptian civilization. This view, which is generally that of all who placed the start of Egyptian civilization outside of Egypt, whether in Asia or in Europe, is shared by Alexandre Moret, who nevertheless apparently favors a local but white origin. To the former, the idea seems logical to some extent. In their eagerness for a reasonable explanation, this is one affirmation added to another equally devoid of historical foundation. In fact, if the pioneers of civilization came from abroad, and if they were forced by geography to cross the Delta, it is logical to assume that the Delta was civilized before Upper Egypt, and that civilization radiated from there. If the supporters of an external origin had been able to demonstrate the Delta's prior claim with the aid of valid arguments, their thesis would obviously have been advanced immeasurably. At least this would have provided a semblance of truth for the contradictory notions they propose. In actual fact, it is impossible not only to demonstrate that theory, but even to find valid historical documents to support it. No document suggests that priority. It is Upper Egypt, from the Paleolithic to the present, that material evidence has been found to attest the successive stages of civilization. The Tasian, Bandarian, circa 7,471 BCE. Amarician, circa 6,500 BCE. Proto-dynastic. In contrast to Upper Egypt, no traces of continuous evolution exist in the delta. The Meramai center disappeared at the end of the Tasian. There is nothing north of Badari. The ivory statuettes with triangular heads found in the epic called the Jerzine, circa 5,500 BCE, correspond to those found in Crete at the time of Menes. These statuettes cannot date back earlier than the epic of Hyrcanopolis, which compart attributes to the Amerasian period between SD 39 and SD 79. A Jersey civilization allegedly existed in Lower Egypt. In any case, Lower Egypt eventually became the seat of a higher civilization with definitely Asiatic as opposed to African affinities, and this civilization ultimately dominated Upper Egypt as well. In fact, it is only known directly from the latter region through its presence in the north may be inferred with confidence. In Upper Egypt, there is no sharp break between the Amerasian civilization and the Jerseyan. The latter gradually trickled in, mixing with the dominating the older elements. New types of vases, weapons with ornaments intrude, even in ever greater number until they predominate or even outs the old entirely. It is universally agreed that the new elements which distinguish the culture of Upper Egypt in the middle pre-dynastic phase are derived from the north or northeast, and it is almost certain that the authors of these innovations had been living in touch with the Upper Nile for a considerable time prior to SD 39, since before that date, isolated decorated vases had occasionally found their way into Upper Egypt. The Jerseyan civilization, said to be Asiatic, is known only through vestiges found in Upper Egypt. How paradoxical, inasmuch as it is supposed to have originated in Lower Egypt. Moreover, these vestiges are identical with those of Amerasian civilization, evolved from the Bandarian, which in turn resulted from the Tasian. Nevertheless, although no traces of Jerseyan civilization have been found, and although it is known directly only by vestiges in Upper Egypt, its presence in the north may be inferred with confidence, meaning its presence in the delta. In clearer terms, this is equivalent to saying all that I find here in Upper Egypt comes from where I find nothing or almost nothing, Lower Egypt. Though I cannot prove this and have no hope to ever seeing it proved, and though I find nothing here, I judge that it is so. This is hardly the way to write history. Peace. We're starting the fourth chapter. Oh, so good. So now this chapter is called Could Egyptian Civilization Have Originated in the Delta? So he's dispelling these. Thank you for the likes and subs on this peaceful part of YouTube where we read books and learn from masters. I'm Master Fitness Trainer Uriel Riley. Welcome. Thank you. Part of the book lovers community. Peaceful part of YouTube right here. All right. We're at page 87 for those reading along, and I will put a brief description, vocabulary in the description when it's finished uploading. It is alleged that the Delta is a humid region and preserves documents poorly. It could not have preserved them so poorly as to have left no sign of them, not even shapeless lumps resulting from chemical decomposition through humidity. In reality, the soil of Lower Egypt has yielded up, after a fashion, all that was entrusted to it. For example, all those works, even in wood, of the Old Kingdom after the Third Dynasty. If it has not produced more ancient documents, we must more logically assume that it never contained any. Had the Delta really played the role they try so hard to ascribe to it in Egyptian history, it would be possible to recognize this in other ways. The history of Upper Egypt, considered independently of the Delta, would present gaps. However, this is not the case. The history of Upper Egypt, i.e., Egyptian history, presents no unsurmountable difficulties. Historical explanations does not become impossible except when one struggles in the absence of historical evidence to assign to the Delta a role it never played. This seems to be the case with Moray when he writes, "We know nothing of those early kingdoms. Yet tradition alleges that the kings of the north had a preeminence over the rest of Egypt at the beginning of time. No text enables us to delimit their zone of influence, but the religion of latter days indicates that such influence was profound. This is explained by the exceptional fertility of the delta. As soon as it could be made fit for cultivation by dint of embanking and draining and irrigating, this stretch of earth, repeatedly renewed by the Nile silt, offered a wider area, a more productive soil, and a more favorable habitat for the growth of prolific race than the narrow valley of Upper Egypt. The result was a precocious material prosperity and intellectual development attested by the fact that the great gods of the Delta ladder later imposed authority on the rest of Egypt. The sun Ra was first worshipped at Heliopolis. Osiris, Isis, and Horus are the gods of the Busiris, the Mendes, and the Budo. The extension of the worship over the whole valley in very early times indicates a corresponding political influence from the Delta. Up to this point, Moray has agreed with Maspero. He disagrees. However, apropos the route followed by the Shemshu Hor in order to be entirely consistent in defending the preeminence of the Delta. In his book, Le Nil et la civilisation égyptienne, contrary to Maspero, who suggests that the Shemshu Hor, predecessors of Menes, are Negro blacksmiths who conquered the valley and built forges as far as the delta. Moray claims that the Shemshu Hor and their forebears came from the delta. He reports a great transformation during the epoch preceding Menes, marked by the appearance of gold, copper, and especially writing. As this transformation is evident only in Egypt, Moray poses the question, by whom was Upper Egypt influenced, if not by Lower Egypt? He cites the invention of the calendar as probably occurring in the region of Memphis. Elsewhere, Moray had claimed that the Egyptian gods, Osiris, Isis, and Horus, were originally from the Delta. So he uses this argument, which is he assumes to be correct, to press his point. Another fact will support this argument. Throughout antiquity, the intercalary days were consecrated to those gods born on the 5 additional days placed at the start of the year. Plutarch. Egyptian and Greek texts agree in calling these gods Osiris and Isis, Set, Nephthys, and Horus at the start of the year, opening with the simultaneous rising of Sothis, Ra, and the Nile. Osiris, god of the Nile and of vegetation, is chosen as patron. He is thought to have been born on the first of 5 additional days. We can conclude that the worshippers of Osiris were powerful in Heliopolis, even at the time its astronomers established the calendar. Thus, with the calendar, Lower Egypt imposed the authority of Isis, Osiris, Ra, the supremacy of the Nile and the sun upon Upper Egypt. The civilized of the Delta had conquered Upper Egypt. When one finds such important ideas expressed by such a authority, one tends to believe that they are supported by conclusive documents. This, however, is not true. When we examine these statements thoroughly, the author poses the Nordic origin of Egyptian gods as consistent with Egyptian tradition. In other words, Osiris, Isis, and Horus were all gods of the Delta. From this, draws the important consequences noted above, relative to the invention of the calendar and the origin of Egyptian civilizations in general. What precisely are we taught by Egyptian tradition if we consider it from the most ancient epic to which one can refer? This tradition expressed in the Book of the Dead, whose doctrine is earlier than any written history of Egypt, teaches us that Isis is a Negro woman. Let that breathe. Sacred Paul. It's your month, baby. Isis, it's your month. We're coming down to your solar return. Mm-hmm. Dr. Schenk at the job. The African origin of civilization, myth or reality. Chapter 4. Woo. He just dropped a big gem. Thank you for the likes and subs. We're pushing towards 700 on this peaceful part of YouTube. Needed that sacred pause right there, and I'll read it again as we go through. Let's go with this whole sentence again. At the top of page 89. This tradition expressed in the Book of the Dead, whose doctrine is earlier than any written history of Egypt, teaches us that Isis is a Negro woman, Osiris a Negro man, and Anu thus. In the oldest Egyptian texts, his name is accompanied by an ethnic designation to indicate his Nubian origin. This we have known since Amelino. Amelino informs us, moreover, that no Egyptian text lists Osiris and Isis as having been born in the Delta. Consequently, when Moray affirms this, he does not draw it from any document. We may even add that the legend pinpoints the birth of Osiris and Isis in Upper Egypt. Mm-hmm. Osiris, born at Thebes, and Isis at Dendera. The legend also places in Nubia the first site of the struggle between Set and Horus. In Amenelo's opinion, the parts of the legend which relate to the Delta have obviously been added to the original version, except for the sojourn of Isis in Buto. In fact, the episode of Isis in Byblos hardly fits in with the stay of this goddess in Buto. In my view, it is merely an interpretation of Greek or quasi Greek origin to explain the adoption of the Osiris cult in Byblos, or rather the myths resembling some local deity. This, moreover, is one of the points of to which Egyptian documents never refer. Likewise, the coffin of Osiris, brought by the Nile to the sea and from the sea to Byblos, seems to me to be one of those obvious impossibilities. I doubt seriously that the Egyptians accepted it, because Egyptian documents never mention it. We must not forget that, with the exception of the portion concerning the Delta and Asia Minor, the Osiris legend was firmly established in Egypt before the time of Menes. Hence, it is indeed difficult to see how a legend born in the Delta was almost localized in Upper Egypt and made no apparent reference to the Delta except in certain passages that are clearly later traditions or additions. Mm. And we'll pause right here, continue back. What a beautiful chapter and reading. Divine days and nights. So we had the seminar the other day. African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality by Dr. Cheikh Anta. So it was a wonderful seminar. Amazing. We did it pretty much. I set it up just like a session. So I gave them some pre-material to warm up with and read, which was a um, article from Harvard Medical about diaphragmatic breathing, right? And so from that, we did some breath work and exercises on diaphragmatic breathing. Then from there, we went into harmonic vibrational and singing and vocal toning. And then from there to assisted stretching. Well, since it was virtual, it was just big form. Um, I guided them through stretching exercises for the entire body. And then we did pressure points to the hands and feet, and displayed how to get out blockages and the crunches, and how when you're rolling that out, that's carried from the blood, and the blood that in toxins settle in certain parts of your body in the lymph nodes, and you have lymph drainage systems. So we did that and breathing to it, tied it all together. So after wonderful, wonderful, conversation and healing session, I always take a walk. Always after, working on anyone, I always take a walk. And my life is forever been amplified and changed. Another metamorphosis, gaining of this. So in my walk, it's not that long of a walk. I go out to Martin Luther King Boulevard and I see crows flying around and going back and forth from the pine trees on each side. And then I see in the street, I see a crow, but it's disabled and it's like kind of crawling and I see cars zooming past, there's traffic, and one goes right past, like almost over it, but not really. And I guess went over part of it. And I was like, no. And I ran out and I go and I grab 2 pine cones from the side where I was standing and I pick him up. And, he's just like, is trying to squawk. And then the crows start flying over top of me and they're squawking, and I get it safely, after the cars, I get it over and I lay it by a palm tree, by a pine tree. And so just lay it there and all right, let me keep going on my journey. Just let it know it's safe now. And, I didn't touch it at that time, but I looked in its eyes a few times and see, it was kind of like mouthing thank you to me. And so crows just circling, and then they all went to like their trees and, kind of were talking. So I go to the store and then I come back. I'm on MLK and I look to see if it had moved from where I left it, and it's still there. And so it looks up at me, and it's just in this perched bird position, and it's like, and I just take my finger and rub it on his head, and so soft, and I was like, I love you. I love you. And then I sang, I love you too. And this is real life. So I let it go, and, part of it, I told him it's okay, it's safe, everything's going to be okay. And thank you for all you've done. And, then I walked away. And when I got to my corner, which is maybe about 60 yards from there, and turned, the crows, 2 crows fly over top of me where they could clearly see and gliding, and squawk, go, ah, ah. And so then I had some amazing dreams. We went to wonderful dreamland. And then I woke up the next day and I go on my AM run like I always do. I'm out the house by 5 in the AM. I start jogging, hit MLK at 5 AM. It's dark out. Whew, right over top of me, 2 of them. And they go, ah, ah, at 5 AM. Then, so I get back from my run. It's 9, a little bit after 9 AM. I get to my street on MLK. Whew, they fly right over top of me. Ah, ah. I'm like, they're talking to me, and I wave to them and I tell them I love you. And then the next day, same thing. Whenever I walk out and go to MLK, a bunch of crows know, and they look and they just honor and they just cross from side to side of the street and crow at me. Let me know I did the right thing. I didn't have to save it when it was in the middle street, but it was like literally I had to. And the lessons I'm still getting, but I know the black crow knows that it's black and it loves that it's black and it wouldn't want to be any other bird or any other thing in the world. So there's one lesson from the crow. The crow also can eat and digest anything. And the lesson of I at least got it out of danger. I did what I could and gave it peace before it elevated. I'm so grateful and thankful. Man, so emotional too. Cried like 4 times over this, just meditating with it. So thank you so much for listening to the pine cone time story of the crow, the black crow. Honor to Rob Bass. We love you. First hip hop rap song I ever memorized. It Takes Two. Has elevated. So, along with the crow, along with our friends and family, we honor you with a glass of love water. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. Honor to everyone at UTLA. That was at the seminar where we discussed the harmonic vibrational manual and self-healing techniques. It was a wonderful showing. I love you. Thank you so much for being here and listening. Hi, it's Heart Love. Thank you to my friends and family, Lewis and Jordan. Thank you for listening. Hi, it's Heart Love and Honor. Ay, 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 ay. Love, 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 love you. Ay, 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 ay. Love, 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 love. You. You know it, because I love myself. Divine days and nights. I'll see you soon when we reconvene. Thank you. Peace.